Here is what's actually happening in West Asia right now, and it's far more consequential than anything you're reading in the headlines. This isn't a diplomatic spat between rival governments. This is a structural collision between a declining imperial power and a nation that has spent 4 decades learning how to take a punch and hit back with precision. Pay close attention, because by the end of this, you'll understand not just the events unfolding, but the deeper logic driving them. If this kind of analysis, the kind that goes beyond the surface narrative, is something you value, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and dropping a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. The perspectives that emerge from this community make this work richer for everyone. Now, let's get into it. I'll start with the blockade, because that's where the official story is being most aggressively shaped, and where the most important questions are going completely unanswered. US Central Command has been announcing with unmistakable satisfaction that it has redirected its 42nd commercial vessel attempting to breach what Washington has unilaterally declared a naval blockade of Iran. The numbers cited are striking: 41 tankers, 69 million barrels of Iranian oil, a market value exceeding $6 billion, intercepted or turned back. Western outlets have run with these figures as proof that American strategy is working, that Iran is crumbling, that maximum pressure is finally biting. But here's what those same headlines are actually telling you, if you're willing to read them honestly. Iran had 69 million barrels of oil moving through international shipping lanes, despite years of sanctions, despite economic isolation, despite a sustained American campaign to strangle its energy exports. The country that Washington has been describing as economically crippled and strategically cornered was, right up until this blockade was announced, successfully selling oil at a scale generating billions in revenue. That's not what a broken country looks like. The blockade didn't expose Iranian weakness. It exposed that everything which came before it had failed. All the sanctions architecture, all the financial pressure, all the maximum pressure branding across multiple administrations, none of it stopped Iran from finding buyers, building alternative logistics, and keeping its economy moving. Washington didn't escalate to naval interdiction from a position of strength. It escalated because the softer tools weren't working, and the global oil market, which doesn't trade in talking points, delivered its verdict immediately. Brent crude surged more than 7.5%, climbing to $120 per barrel. Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf publicly forecast a further rise to $140 and called Washington's approach strategically incoherent. That's worth taking seriously as an analytical claim, not dismissing as rhetoric. Here's the incoherence he's pointing to. The blockade was imposed, at least in part, to generate enough economic pressure on Tehran to force nuclear concessions. The logic seems clean. Cut off oil revenues, deepen the pain, and Iran comes to the table on American terms. But the mechanism through which that pressure travels runs straight through the same global energy markets that American allies, American consumers, and American-aligned economies all depend on. A price spike to $120 or $140 per barrel doesn't discriminate. It hits Europe, it hits Japan, it hits India, it hits the pump prices of ordinary Americans. Secretary of State Marco Rubio appeared on Fox News and framed Iran's geographic position over the Strait of Hormuz as a form of hostage-taking, as evidence of Iranian aggression against the entire world economy. It's a vivid argument. It also has a fatal flaw. The United States initiated this confrontation. The United States imposed the blockade. The United States began publicly exploring military options, including strikes on Iranian territory. Iran's leverage over the strait isn't something it manufactured to threaten the world. It's a geographic reality, one that only becomes relevant when someone else decides to apply military or economic force against Iran. Now stay with me, because this is where the narrative shifts entirely. President Trump, speaking to oil industry executives, made a telling comparison. The naval blockade, he suggested, was more effective than bombing Iran. That statement matters not for what it claims, but for what it reveals. The fact that he's weighing these options against each other tells you that bombing was a live debate, not a rhetorical flourish. Reports subsequently confirmed that US Central Command had developed contingency plans for what was described as a swift and concentrated series of strikes on Iranian targets. Additional options reportedly on the table included sending special operations forces to physically seize Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium and taking operational control of sections of the strait itself. Sit with that for a moment. A nuclear-armed superpower is seriously discussing commando raids to physically remove nuclear material from a sovereign nation. This is not fiction. This is reportedly an active option in American national security planning. And the reason it's even being discussed is that 4 decades of pressure, sanctions, cyber attacks, assassinations of Iranian scientists and commanders, proxy warfare, has not produced the outcome Washington wanted. Iran has not dismantled its program. It has not restructured its regional posture. It has not capitulated. And so the options being reached for have become increasingly extraordinary.